Our guest tonight is Dr. Grace A. John Aguanya. Dr. Grace A. John Aguanya, amongst many things, is an Amazon best-selling author, a human development strategist, and a biomedical researcher. She is a serious speaker who inspires many to become better individuals in all areas of life. Grace is a trained medical laboratory scientist with a first class in pharmaceutical science. That's in her MSc, and then that was gotten from the University of Greenwich, United Kingdom, and had a doctorate degree, that's a PhD, at the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, in collaboration with University of Nebraska Medical Center, Omaha, United States of America. Amidst her commitment, she founded Grace for Active Progress Empowerment Initiative, that's GAP, an NGO that focuses on creating educational awareness, vocational training, and provision of humanitarian services to students and internally displaced persons. Thousands of youth have been inspired through our school empowerment program and book distribution. Dr. Grace founded Twinkle Biomedical, a diagnostic training platform, and also run Amara's Hub concept, and event management, content writing, and editing service provider. She has been a guest on radio, TV shows, and has spoken at several live and online events, just like she's doing this evening. Let's welcome our guest for today, Dr. Grace A. John Aguanya.
Thank you, Mr. Osas, for putting this G Habit Summit together. It's a learning process, not just for those of us who are facilitators and have to come to speak, but also for every one of us, because every phase of our life is a level of growth, and depending on how much of commitment we give, that's what in the long run determines the kind of outcome that we are expecting. I don't know if you can hear me. I want to be sure of that before I proceed fully. Just acknowledge that you can hear me. Okay, so let me not get distracted, and I'll be focusing straight on what I have to share today. I know one of the things I was told to focus about is about key habits and what I could do or what I have done over the years that determined the kind of success that we have reflected in our lives. And one thing that I would want to lay emphasis on is the fact that every one of us has a unique story. Every one of us has a unique journey. And one thing that for me is very vital in the kind of success we see or the kind of success we expect in our life is closely tied to who we are, what we do, and the fact that every day of our lives really counts. Okay, for me not to waste much time, the first thing I'll be focusing about when it comes to the key habits of the success I've been able to see in my life and the things I could do over the years to get the kind of success I've been able to reflect presently. First thing first is understand yourself. Understand yourself. Many of us have not reflected the kind of success that we expect because we don't have that understanding of who we are, and we are so focused on people's opinion, people's success, what they are doing, and we're jumping around trying to do what A is doing. Oh, he got this kind of success, let me try it. You try to do that of another person, and in the bid of you jumping from one person to another, you think you're making progress, but the truth is you don't even have an understanding of who you are and your own unique journey. I would start from this perspective. For many of us, when we started, I wasn't a fast starter, I was a late starter, and I would explain it from this perspective. There are some students who were very, very intelligent and very, very smart right from secondary school, and when some of us were struggling with outright failure, they were already hitting their targets, they were already high flyers, they were already celebrated. But for some of us, it was back-to-back failure. And it was after I left secondary school and I had to rewrite my WAEC, that was when my brain opened and I began to reflect excellence to this point. So when I see young people struggling, I am not quick to judge. I am not quick to condemn, because I know that people are different. And it's one thing for you to see other people's success and appreciate their success. It is also a different ball game when you understand yourself and you understand your strengths, you understand your weaknesses, you understand the opportunities that life presents to you, and you also look around for the threats that are going to come on your way and how you respond to it. Focus one. What is your strength? The strength I have may never be your strength in your lifetime, because it has no correlation with the kind of destiny that God has for you. And the kind of strength you have, even if I want to copy you, I may never reflect that kind of strength because it doesn't align to my own life. Why? Because we have different, unique purposes that God has made us to fulfill. And when you understand your uniqueness, it makes you appreciate who you are, appreciate your journey, and the issue of competing and trying to be like other people doesn't come in at all. So the first thing you would need to do for yourself when it comes to habits, when it comes to developing strong habits that can align with the success you desire, is know yourself first. Know yourself. Know the challenges you have faced over the years and ask yourself, okay, this challenge, how can I surmount it? I say that for one reason. I had this challenge of, when I read personally, I can read for hours at a stretch. I could be on my books, laptop, and I'm just reading and devouring because I have academic targets. 5 hours, I'm still there. Take me to the class during lecture. In 1 hour, I'm dozing. It wasn't happening occasionally. It was happening like back to back. At a point, one of my prayer point was, please pray for me. I don't want to be sleeping in the class. Yes. So I observed that when I'm in the class, my brain responds as though it is forced learning. Like, I don't want to read. I don't want to learn. You're forcing me to learn. And what does it respond to? It just dozes off. That's literally way I can explain it. Because I could observe that when I am on my own reading, I stay for hours. But when I am in the class, doing lecture, I can stay alert for the first 1 hour. After that, my brain wants to shut down. Like, I want to sleep. I am tired of that lecture. I want to do something else. And that happened consecutively. So when I had tried, I wasn't the coffee type. So even if I tried to take the coffee, it wouldn't really work, and I stopped beating myself up that, Grace, why are you sleeping in the class? I had to ask myself, what can you do right? But since I could stay for hours reading alone, I took that as what I would be doing. So I could spend hours reading, and I was making up for those lost time, those few minutes that minutes I would sleep in class, and it was as though I was one unserious student who knew or loved to sleep in class. But I knew it wasn't as though I wanted to sleep. I'm using that as an example so that when some people see us as, when they were reading my profile, she had a distinction in this, she has a this and that, they just feel like, all these lucky persons who, because they just had everything work out for them and they're just coming here to come and speak motivational talk for us. I didn't start on that high note. And that's why I'm giving this story level. And because I had known that was the weakness I was struggling with, and I didn't know how to overcome it, but I had known that when I read alone, I stay longer. I maximize that. When my result came out and I had a distinction in my master's, I had that struggle much more during my master's degree, because that was when I understood that this was an issue. I couldn't stay alert in class. I had a distinction. And I called my husband. I was like, my result is out. I had a distinction. He was like, if this is how people sleep and get distinction, he too wants to be sleepy to get a distinction. We talked about that and we laughed. But I knew it that I understood myself and asked, what can I do to mitigate this weakness? What can I do to overcome this challenge? So it is wisdom for you to identify that this is a problem and ask yourself, how can I overcome it? Until you tell yourself the truth, you can't find a solution. Many of us don't tell ourselves the truth. So I won't come here and start for me for you that I have always been on top of my game. I know how to do things. There are times when I'm not on top of my game. But the question is, when those times come, How do I respond? And that's why, first things first, you need to understand yourself. Secondly, aim to succeed. Yeah, this one sounds like a motivational talk. Aim to succeed. I don't understand. I say that for one reason. In our lives, from when we were very small as children to whatever age we are at now, there's always been one level of either exam we need to write to pass and all that. So when it comes to your personal life, when it comes to your goal, one thing you need to tell yourself is, I'm going to aim to succeed. So when I'm embarking on a new project, in my head, I want to be successful in this project. If I am embarking on an exam, in my head, I want to succeed. So will I pass or will I fail? I don't know. But I will give in all the commitment, all the devotion, all the determination, all the persistence, every effort that is required on my part. I will give it. My aim is success. Whether I will get the success or not get the success, I don't know, but I'm expecting success. So I'm giving in all the energy and commitment to get that success. The reason why I say that is sometimes when failure comes, we tend to justify it, we tend to give excuses for it. But when failure comes and you know you gave your best, there is this sense of fulfillment that you know you did your best. I gave my best shot. I did all I knew I needed to do within my power. And yes, I may not have come out successful, or I may not have gotten that thing I was desiring, but I know I did my best. And that gives you a consolation. And that's the same thing you have to tell yourself. Because if you don't aim to, if success is not your overall goal and failure comes, it's just like, hey, well, I didn't even believe that's going to work. So you've already had this mindset of anyhow will not give you the success you desire. And that's why you have to make success your target. Getting it or not getting it is a whole different ballgame. Aim to succeed. But then what happens when failure comes? And that's the next thing. Facing failure. Remember when I was sharing my story, when I was in secondary school, I wasn't the smart kind of child. And I had a series of failures in my terminal exams. And it wasn't as though I loved failure, but it was more like I was reading, but maybe I wasn't reading rightly. I remember in my SS1, SS2, am I right? I think in my GS3 first term, I had 42 position out of 45. In my SS1 to SS2, I was promoted on trial, and I was told that if I don't perform well in my SS2 first term, I'm going to be told to repeat. At the point, I was even advised to leave the science class for arts, since my performance in the science subject was very poor. Physics, chemistry, biology, where it was just very crazy, you know. And teachers advised, few persons advised, but I was a stubborn teenager, and I refused to leave the science class, even though I had back-to-back failure. I love the sciences. I wrote my first WIEC, and I passed only one subject, food and nutrition. I failed physics, chemistry, biology, maths, English. It was an outright failure, you know. And then I was a very chubby child, and my mother said that because I loved food, that was why I passed food and nutrition, and I failed the other subject. It wasn't like that. And I had to rewrite WIEC the next year, and I had to prepare my parents had to make me enroll for extramural lessons, and that was where God opened my head. Like, I began to understand. I began to read rightly. I had gotten used to failure over time. I had failed repeatedly. So explaining failure to me was not necessary because I knew what failure was. I wanted to begin to succeed. And that's what I'm saying, facing failure. You know, and I did all I could do. And I wrote my WIEC, and I cleared all my papers in one shot. And that became my pathway into excellence. My first degree, I had a second class upper. Master's, I had a distinction. A PhD, my dissertation, I had a distinction. You know, and that was how my story changed. Why? Because I had to face failure headlong. Some of us may have encountered failure, and it took a toll on us. It made us lose confidence in ourselves. It made us ask questions. It made us see people who are successful, and we feel they are lucky. But one thing is sure and certain. Failure may hit some of us at some point in our life. For some persons, they may have had back-to-back failures. So explaining failure is not necessary because they know what failure is. For some persons, they've been used to success that when failure comes, it hits them so hard. Irrespective of the category that you're in, at some point in life, failure will come our path. The question is, how do you handle failure? Do you give up and tell yourself, I don't do it again, like I've tried? Or do you keep pushing and pushing and pushing till you get the thing you desire? And that's what I would expect you to do, because I have faced failure, I have faced challenges, I have faced things that made me question, God, where did I go wrong? But instead of giving up, instead of going down, instead of getting discouraged and feeling like, look, I'm not going to push again, I'm not going to try again, I kept trying. And that's what took me to this level where I am. You know, I'm saying that for somebody out there who may feel life is unfair and all that. Keep pushing. And when failure comes, face failure headlong and do what you need to do right. Okay, and handling rejection. Yes. When it comes to handling rejection, for some persons who may have applied for a job or they didn't get, or they had an expectation for something, and instead of them to get an acceptance offer, the next thing you say, we are sorry, you didn't get this, you didn't get that. I had a time when I had to submit a manuscript for publication, and that was my first manuscript, and I got a rejection letter. The rejection letter was not the problem. The problem was they copied two professors in Nigeria, two professors in Nigeria, copied one professor in the US, copied another, two professors in the US, two professors in Nigeria, if I recall well, copied another doctor, in fact, I was embarrassed, you know, and one of the professors who saw the email had to call me because I guess he knew I was discouraged, you know, and he now advised me that when it comes to submitting manuscripts, there are times when you've given all your best and the editing bodies don't value what you have done. At such times, have a list of plan B, meaning if I apply for this one and it doesn't work out, instead of you spending time on rejection and feeling like, God, why me? Go on to the next plan in your agenda. And once that one works out, go. If that one doesn't work out, go to the next, and like that. And what he told me helped me. So when I'm pursuing a project, I have a list of targets. So if A doesn't work out, I try the next one, I try the next one. So it doesn't give me time to wallow in self-pity, which is what rejection often causes. We just begin to say, God, why me? Why did it happen? Why did it not happen? And this other person got, why is it me that didn't get it? That in itself can make us lose our confidence and lose the drive. I had another rejection, another manuscript, and the editors were not nice in their words. It was more like an insult. You know, they weren't nice at all. And the words hit me. So I would come here to start telling you, you know, whenever you have rejection, face it and move on, all those motivational talks. That rejection hits me well. This is different from the first one I talked about. And when I saw that, I had to take a break for like a month. I didn't attend to the manuscript again. I needed to recover mentally from that rejection. And when I came back to it and addressed all the questions and all the confusions that those editors had remarked on, my paper was accepted in the second application. And for me, every one of us, as our faces differ, would have handled rejection in a different way. But the ball game is, when rejection comes, it shouldn't make you lose sight of that focus you have in mind. We all have a goal, we all have a target. And our focus should be on that target and not to the circumstances that surround us in the journey towards that target. And that's what happens when rejection comes. I hope that somebody's hearing me out there. I'm not talking to myself. Good. The next point I'm going to talk about is take the next step. And I'll go from this perspective. I used to be this kind of person that loves to talk to people. I want to encourage people. I love to be a source of encouragement, a motivational speaker. I know doing public speaking is my core strength, whether physically or online events. I just love to talk to people. But at a point in my life, there were so many challenges, too many things were happening wrong at the same time. And I wasn't taking any step at all towards the things that are of core value to me. And when that happened, it just went on and on and on and on and on. And you just know in your head, I'm supposed to be doing this. I'm supposed to take advantage of social media to do the things I love to do. It just revolves in my head. But to take that one step was a problem. I stumbled on a lady's video and I was scrolling through her profile and I was watching her video clips back to back. And all I was seeing, I can't recall most of the things she was saying, but all I know that was in my mind while I was watching her was, Grace, this is you. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Why are you not taking a step? Why are you allowing the things that life is throwing at your path to stop you from making progress, to stop you from taking those deliberate actions that takes you closer to your core goal? Why are you not doing it? That was what her video was doing to me. It was more like a wake-up call. It was more like, Grace, you're made for more. Grace, I'm just imagining God telling me, Grace, I've put plenty of deposits, plenty of treasures in you, and the world needs to listen to you. The world needs to learn from you. The world needs to be blessed by the potential you carry. But Grace, what are you doing? You're there complaining and allowing the issues of life to be a distraction. That was what it was for me. And when I watched that over time, it made me to become deliberate in my activities on social media. Apart from my online activities, I stopped allowing those excuses. It wasn't as if those excuses left. It wasn't as if my life became perfect, but I stopped allowing those challenges and those things that were stumbling blocks to limit me from taking a step towards my purpose. That was a defining factor for me. And that's why for you out there, I don't know what that core goal is for you. You need to take that step. Yours may not be social media. Yours may not be to come and be doing public speaking like some of us do. But whatever it is that aligns with your core goal, that aligns with you, that you do it and you have the sense of fulfillment that makes you know your living purpose. Whatever that thing is, you need to take that step. You need to begin to take action. This was what I had to do. And when I began to do that, I began to write, I began to do some audios. I began to do videos. I remember the first live video I did. I can't imagine how many times I cut the video out of fear. My heart was panicking when I was facing the camera to do the live video on Facebook. But I started, and that was how I kept growing and growing to the point where I could begin to reach out to people beyond my immediate space. I could begin to get comments from people either on my WhatsApp or my inbox or comments in my post, and all they are saying is thank you for sharing this, thank you for being a blessing. I had somebody who said that they were depressed, they were suicidal, and it was the words I spoke to them that helped them get past it. And that in itself for me was purpose. For me was gave me a sense of fulfillment that aligned with me. This is different from certificates or what I read in school. So one thing I would want to be very clear for every one of us is we shouldn't allow our certificates or the courses that we read in school to define us, meaning everything about me is Dr. Grace, PhD, pharmaceutical microbiology. And when it comes to other aspects of life, I cannot function. When it comes to fulfilling my core purpose as Grace, I cannot function. Why? Because it doesn't have anything to do with book. So you need to have that balance in your life where you can differentiate your career or your educational qualifications and you as a person fulfilling purpose. When you do that, it makes a whole difference. Because at some point, yes, you have other qualifications, right? But there is this emptiness you feel because you feel you're meant for more. That was what I was feeling. I knew I was meant for more. I knew I wasn't just meant to get some paper qualifications. I wanted to be a blessing to people. I wanted to reach out to lots of persons. And when I began to take those steps, it made a whole difference. Yes, when Mr. Osas was talking, he talked about me doing empowerment programs. And I remember when I started the empowerment program in Kaduna, and I I think that was a period where I was recovering. I wasn't feeling so fine at a point, and I was recovering. And I was asking myself, okay, what do I do at this point? I had taken a career break that period, so I wasn't really practicing as a medical lab scientist. In that period, I was like, okay, what do I do? I need to reach out to schools. The next question is, okay, how do I start empowerment programs? And because I had been active online, I could compile my first book, and that was why I authored my first book, Unclog the Clog, My Adventure to Find Me. And when people ask me, what's the book about? And I'm like, the book talks about how I overcame low self-esteem. And they're like, well, Grace, we thought you've always been confident. I'm like, yeah, people think I've always been confident, but I know I struggled at the point with low self-esteem, and it was affecting me I was having self-limiting beliefs, and it was affecting me from taking steps towards my core goals, and when I had to get that out, I did the empowerment program, and I had a target of schools. I wrote to about 21 schools. 15 gave me audience, and with that 15, we could speak, myself and a team of young ladies who joined me and a few guys, they could speak with thousands of youths. We had some schools where on a stage without microphone, you're talking to over 200 students, and you're moving from point A to point B so that everybody can hear you, and that was how that was. I remember when we were one of the schools, Queen Amina College in Kaduna, I had the principal called me and said the students who they are going to bring to attend are students who repeated that session, and most of them are depressed. So these were the ladies that were brought for us to talk, for me, myself and my team members to speak to them, and I spoke to these ladies, and there is this joy and this feeling of fulfillment that comes with the fact that beyond your paperwork, beyond whatever qualification you've had, you're affecting lives. I remember a young lady who asked me a question in one of the schools that we visited, and she stood up and said, Dr. Grace, she called her name, I can't recall her name, and she said, I repeated. The people at the back are my classmates. The people I'm sitting with are my juniors. Sometimes I read and I get depressed. How can I overcome depression? Getting to this point where you talk to young people, teenagers, and they have the confidence to tell you the challenge they're going through, and because you shared not just your strength and your success, you shared your struggle, you shared the fact that you once failed, and it broke that veil, and they could share with you their struggle. Another boy stood up in one school, and he said, one of the schools I went to, and he said, they used to call me good for nothing. How can I be good for something? In that school, it was only that boy I gave a book, one of my books, as free, and I wrote on his book. I had to do an autograph on the book, because for me, whatever empowerment program we're doing in those schools, we're making these young children, these young teenagers, to get their confidence back, to begin to take steps towards their life. And why am I sharing this? I don't know what it is that you need to do outside of career, outside of office work, outside of making money, outside of entrepreneurship. I don't know what that thing is. You need to take that step. Yeah. And even for those of you who have academic plans, please take that step. If you want to do a master's, take that step. I tell people that even if you stay back and you're praying and fasting, God, I want to get a PhD, God, I want to, and you pray and fast and fast and fast, and fast for 365 days in a year, and you don't take that step, you don't go to buy the form, you don't do what you need to do, your prayer will not be answered. It doesn't mean that God doesn't answer prayer. The truth is, you did not do your part. So there is a step you need to take, and there is a part that God will do by himself. Well, you have your part to play, and you need to do that part. The next point I'm going to talk about is, just give me a few seconds, please. Okay, the next point I'm going to talk about is write and share your story. Yes, write and share your story. When I began to get active on social media, one thing I knew I had to use as a tool was sharing my story, the same way I am sharing my story. And I discovered that so many persons are struggling. So many persons, when they see people who are successful, they tend to think their life is so perfect, and that's why their lives are okay. But until they come close and hear the story and the challenges that some other persons had to overcome. That's what makes the whole difference. And I discovered that when I began to write, when I began to share my story, it gave me access to audience. It gave me access to people. It gave me access to people beyond my immediate space. I had a young man send me an inbox message, and he was like, "Thank you for speaking to me when I wanted to commit suicide." I could not even remember when he wanted to commit suicide. I couldn't even remember when I spoke to him. But he now had to start referring and referring and referring, and I tried to remember. I've had persons who come to my inbox and they're sharing their personal story, deep story, and the question I'm asking is, why are you sharing? And they're like, I read your story and I connected with it and I feel you can help me. And I say that for one reason. For some of us, it may not be personal stories, it may be career related, it may be inspirationally related, but begin to write and share your story. Begin to do that, because none of us is going to live on earth forever. Yeah, I always say that in most of my broadcasts. None of us will be here on earth forever. We all have a timeline. We all have a timeline. I was once 1 day old, and today I am not 1 day old. In another 10 years, I will be 10 years old and older than I am. And that's how it is for every one of us. And each day that passes takes us closer to our end date on earth. And the earlier we tell ourselves and come to terms with that and begin to live our lives with a sense of urgency, the better for us. And that's why when it comes to writing and sharing your story, nobody can do it for you. It may not be on social media. I'm trying to make that emphasis so that everybody doesn't go to social media. But we are in an era of social media. So the question is, how do you take advantage of what you have in your space? For some persons, what they write on social media is not personal. It's either their experience on the job, what they're learning in the course of their training, and they're getting more opportunities. I was doing a personal broadcast yesterday, and I stumbled on somebody's post on LinkedIn yesterday, and a guy was talking about how to build a house with minimal cost. And he just indicated some steps, technical steps when it comes to building and construction. And one professor of building and construction in the UK saw his post, made a comment and said, please reach out to me inbox. I have an opportunity for you. Just by writing and sharing something. So it may be writing something about your field, something of your interest, something in art, something in music, something in business, entrepreneurship. Just do you. But you need to be visible, because there are people. Look, every one of us, we pray for God, open doors for me. The truth is, God uses people to open doors for us. God uses people to open doors for us. But how will they see us if we are always hiding? When I was on one of my jobs, I wanted to do a PhD, and I was working in a research facility, and I saw research opportunities in that organization, and I reached out to the prof, and I'm like, I have an intention of doing my PhD, an on-the-job PhD. I don't know whether you can give me consent to use the lab and the facility in the lab to do my research work. And he gave me consent that I should begin to take steps. And that was how I started. And I did the part I could do to the point where I got funding. I didn't get the funding directly, but because I chose to write, I chose to do what I needed to do career-wise when it comes to research, my PhD work. With the connection the prof had, I got an all-expense-paid trip to the US to do my second phase of my research work. So imagine if I didn't take that first step. Imagine if I didn't start writing. Imagine if I didn't start sharing about my research interest. I would be here praying, and God is like, babe, take a step. Go and speak to this person. Go and do that. God will not come down from heaven to do those kind of things. I think I'm almost running out of my time. In the next few minutes, I'm almost done. And until we get to that point, you would know that every aspect of your journey is important. On personal price, every one of us has a price to pay when it comes to success that we expect. And one thing that is core value to me when it comes to paying the price is time. How do you use your time? How do you maximize your time? What do you do with your time? I noticed that how productive I became was connected to much of reading, much of writing. That was when I wasn't a writing person, but I had to develop that skill. I had to begin to learn to maximize long hours, sometimes into midnight, to meet deadlines, to do the things that are of core interest to me. Maximize your time. Ask yourself, for the things and the targets I have, for the things and the targets that you have, how have I been using my time? One thing that God gave equally to every one of us, rich and poor, short and tall, every one of us equally is 24 hours. But what makes the difference within the quality of lives that we live is what we do in that time. And it makes a whole difference. Secondly, when it comes to personal price, is traveling. Yes, I traveled a lot when I was doing my PhD work. Now, with things I have in my schedule, traveling is not part of it. And I look back and I'm grateful that I paid that price that time. Some of us, when we are in an expectant phase of our lives where I'm like desperate, I want to get this, I want to get this, I want to get this, God when, God when. We get so engrossed in the God when that we don't see that timing as a phase that we can maximize while waiting for that thing that we are trusting God for. But that was something I did. I had to maximize my time. Those times when I'm like, God, now when are they going to give me this kind of thing I'm asking for? And it's like it's taking time, it's taking few months, it's taking longer than I expect. And I'm like, do I just stay idle waiting until when God gives me that thing? What do I do in that time? It made a whole difference when I began to take steps. And that was when I embarked on my PhD. That was when I was working in Abuja. My family were in Kaduna. I was schooling in Zaria. So I was hopping from Kaduna, Zaria, Abuja repeatedly. At the point I was boarding taxis. Later on, I started driving Abuja, Kaduna, Zaria, and insurgency has started that period where all this kidnapping and all that as at that time, but it hadn't gotten to how bad it became recently. But in all, God was just saving me. I could drive from Kaduna to Abuja, and by the time I reached Abuja, I would go online and be like, this woman and her child were kidnapped along Kaduna Road, and I'm like, oh God, I just drove past. But that was the kind of risk I was taking. That was the kind of commitment I was giving at that period. It was a personal price. Today I look back and I'm grateful I did it that time. Now I cannot try it. I cannot try it. So sometimes many of us, I was speaking with a young guy and he was looking for admission. He wanted to study medicine. I wrote about that in one of my books, Flexible Stress and Career Choice. And he was bent on medicine. 4 years down the line, he hadn't gotten admission for medicine. He didn't do anything in those 4 years. And I asked him, did you get any admission at all at that period? He said he got one admission. It wasn't what he wanted. And the question I asked him was, if you had maximized that time, you would have made more progress with your life than being idle completely. Last few ones is invest in projects. Yes, but for all the outreaches I had done, personal commitment, personal finances were involved. And when people see how much of commitment I was doing towards those projects, I got people supporting those projects because they saw that without their efforts, without their commitment or financial commitment to those projects, I was still going to do that. You get to that point where when it comes to execution, you are accountable to yourself. That's one thing many of us don't do. Be accountable to yourself. Yes, we're always, I know I've had this slogan lately, accountability, get an accountability partner. That's wonderful. But what if your accountability partner is also busy? What if your accountability partner has personal commitments, is traveling, has business deals, and you being accountable to him or her is the least of their challenge? What do you do at such times? You have to learn to be accountable to yourself every single day. Sometimes you're not in the mood, but you tell yourself, if I don't do it, I know nobody's going to flog me, but I owe this to myself. And that's one thing you have to remind yourself. Be accountable to yourself. Attend trainings, learn from others. I have learned a lot from a lot of persons. So I can't come here and beat my chest that it is me, myself, and I that took myself to this point. God used people. I have learned from people either closely or through trainings, attending their trainings physically, reading their books, but I have been a person who has grown by virtue of relationship, by virtue of interaction with people. The passion I have presently towards research was because of the boss I worked with, who was a professor. And I learned, that was where I developed the interest for research. If I hadn't worked with him, I really don't know whether I would have been in this path where I am in now. So understand that people are vital, and the people we interact with on a day-to-day basis determines the kind of success we will reflect. It's all exhausting. I know we've learned a lot from lots of our facilitators, but understand yourself first, and every other thing will fall in place. Thank you very much for the time.
About trainings. You talk about trainings. Now, how did you get involved in training? At what point did you start, attending trainings? Were they free? Was it? How did you? The things you do now. Were there times where you had to go seek more knowledge about it and it cost you something?
Yes, when it comes to it is not all innate. The innate parts are there, but for most parts, trainings helped. Some of the trainings were either virtually, for some they were paid trainings, for some they were free trainings that I stumbled on online, either for persons I follow who are doing what I love or what resonates with me, and I follow them back to back. And when I do that, I'm learning their process. I am learning how they do it. I am learning. Sometimes the things I learn are not what they are saying. It is how they are saying it.
All
So you
right.
can imagine somebody going to, if I use the word, it's more like I go to a restaurant to eat,
Yeah.
and people are expecting me to relish on the food, but I am observing how did the waitress serve me, how did they respond when I greeted them, did they greet me, how was the security guard at the entrance. For other persons, they just came to eat, but for me, all those things are what gives me that satisfaction and fullness of visiting that restaurant. And that's how it is
All
for
right.
me with trainings. I may attend your training, and I may not even understand, or I may not even remember what you said. It may be how you're even putting your hand on your chin now, and you're
Yeah.
studying and listening to
Yeah.
what I'm saying. And I'm like, okay, wow. So even when I'm listening to other people, do I give this physical reflection that I am with them? I am not distracted while they are speaking.
All
Can
right.
I learn their mannerism? So for me, training and learning is beyond just the paid trainings which I've attended and I've paid over
Okay.
time, but it's
All
also
right.
for me learning on set things.
Okay. Now, I also want to ask. I know of a truth that no writer, you cannot be a writer if you are not a reader. That's not possible. You cannot write a book if you are not one who is given to the habit of reading. Now, I want you to tell us what's your reading culture and what's the number one or two books that have made the greatest impact in your life.
Okay. Yeah, when it comes to reading has been helpful for me. I know if I think of the recent books I've read, Atomic Habits is one of the recent book I've read, and I've read lots of spiritual books. I use the word spiritual books because for me, for the things I do presently, it's not just all about intelligence, it's not just about intellectual knowledge. I also draw strength from the spiritual because I know that even when it comes to reaching out to people, it's not just about the words I speak and all the English language of phony I'm trying to form, but it's more about reaching out to those persons in areas that resonate with them. So in those aspects, I need also the spiritual strength. So I have spiritual books. I don't have any to mention now. They're diverse. And I
Uh,
pick those books based on the interest I have at that time. Sometimes it's audio. So it may not necessarily be physical hard books. It could be audio books. It could be audio messages or podcast. But I am somebody who, when I have studied you over time and I'm like, you have something that I need, I will follow you back to back, even if you don't know. Why? Because there is a wealth of knowledge I know that I can tap into that would help me to be successful in my own journey.
all right.
So that has been diverse for me. That has been
Okay.
diverse for me.
Okay. And lastly, I want to ask you. This may look a bit personal. How do you strike a balance being a wife, being a researcher, and with what you are doing now? How do you strike a balance? What are your daily routines, as it were? And then, secondly, on the average, how many books do you read in a month?
Okay. Okay. Let me start from the aspect of balance. When it comes to balance, I know I've had lots of ladies ask me that question, and I tell ladies first of all that when it comes to, if you're a career person, you have to be very careful of who you get married to, so that your dreams are not crippled if the person that you get married to doesn't have an understanding of all the career plans that you have. So that has been something that my husband had known right from time before we got married, that I am somebody who is goal driven. I have plenty of targets that I want to meet. I have plenty of aspirations, and I got that support. So that support in itself helped me striking the balance, even when I talked about having to travel Abuja, Kano, Zaria, because I was working at Abuja, I was doing PhD in Zaria, my family were in Kaduna, and the whole rigmarole was because of that level of understanding. So creating a balance was easy because I had a
Oh,
spouse who had that understanding. So that's where many of us as women struggle. If one
okay.
settles for a spouse who doesn't have that understanding, it's
Okay.
striking a balance becomes very difficult. Your second question, please, I can't remember.
The average, how many books do you read in a month?
In a month, for now, um, when it comes to hard copy, I would say one, but I have lots of online resources. I spend much time on the internet, so I have lots of online resources. So I would not use the physical book as my only count, because I know I read a lot online of different things and different areas of interest. So
Okay.
one thing I had to learn to do was to diversify my life. So because I'm a biomedical researcher, I have PhD and all that, all
All
my
right.
life story will not be only biomedical. So I
Okay.
read on different aspects.